There he is. Yeah, put your butt up to me. Hi, buddy. Hi, Clyde. So I've been sitting with the kitty cats all day today and like just kind of chilling, and I wasn't really letting myself appreciate it. I had a really good like therapy session yesterday and stuff. I just kind of did that thing where it's like, well, the next day now I'm gonna like fuck everything up. So I ingested too much caffeine, which my problem with caffeine is it kind of artificially creates problems because I already have anxiety, and it's the way to kind of amp that up. Now I'm pretty sure I have ADHD though, because like it doesn't do it at first. In fact, I feel really good when I first drink it. It's the come down from it. It's the crash or whatever. It's where the anxiety actually goes up, and it's more than usual. But like, I think the reason I do it, and it's not good at all because I feel like shit right now. But the reason I do it is because my normal levels of anxiety is a manageable level, but that makes me weirdly more anxious as a result, and kind of just makes me whatever because I actually have to think about how I want to move forward with my life now that a lot of the issues I was having have kind of like gone away. So it's like easier for me to create these artificial anxieties, through just amping it up, putting myself on this anxiety steroid, if you want to call it, that caffeine is for me. And yeah, and that's what I did today, and that didn't help me, and that puts me in its own limbo because I can't really do much because the second I start doing really physical stuff, I get winded really quickly because my body's tight, my head's tight, and then I also have like not the deepest breathing in the world. It becomes a chore to try to do it. And it's just I'm all physically fucked up and doing all this other stuff, and I've been experiencing this for a while now because I can't let myself be. But I don't know. I was thinking today about how I don't know how I just won't like literally all my problems. Yes, well, yeah, no. Literally, all my problems are caused by me, but it's not so much in the sense of like the way I was treating it, of like, oh, you piece of shit, da 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 da, like keep doing this to yourself, you suck. And you like, I know to be more positive to yourself, there is a certain level of accountability you need to have for the amount of damage you do, but you also need to understand why you're doing that. And there still is some grace to be had that I do need to give myself, but not. I need to do it in more in areas where I haven't been giving myself the grace before, but not as much in other areas. There are the other areas where I'm kind of letting myself off the hook too much, and I need to like crack down on that. So it's a bit nuanced the way I gotta kind of go about it. But yeah, all day today I've just been constant whatever, if especially if I sit in silence long enough, because like I haven't been doing as much as watching TV, so I'm sitting here just kind of like letting myself just like sit with my thoughts too much, and it's so easy to come up with scenarios that feel real because I'll sit here and like one issue's taken care of in my head, and now another thing comes up, and it gets especially more frustrating when I've eliminated all the stuff so I convinced myself of so much, because now I'm in this in between process of trying to come up with a new thing, and it drives me crazy because I feel like there should be something there that's fucking with me, and as a result, I get fucked with even more because it's an invisible thing as it doesn't exist. Now that's always been the case, but I mean like in such a more literal sense because it had always been like that, but there were so many moments where it was so easy to convince myself of real things. But I'm in such a place now, well, currently right now because I'm in between the thoughts that I want to attack myself with, so it makes me extra anxious because now I can't pin it on something. But the other thing on top of that that kind of creates just a general sense of that throughout this just my life in general is the limbo, like even in those moments like real time right now, if I did have something I could fixate on that was a fake thing that I made up that I can whatever, it still doesn't change the fact that overall I'm in a sense of limbo, just kind of in my life just in general with how it's been difficult to motivate myself for stuff, and I just kind of go through the motions, but also just the fact of like the reason I'm like this, or like that I feel like I need to be like this, or I'm trying to convince myself to be like this, is because I am in such a place where that shouldn't be an issue. And I know that in the fact that because I've been through so much therapy and stuff, I know all the things that are wrong and need to fix. And see, I know all that, but like then I'm extra hard on myself again because I'm like, okay, I just need to like, because I convince myself now it's a switch that needs to be flipped, but it's like, oh no, it still is going to be a process to completely get myself out of that I gotta be patient for, which makes me more frustrating because it's just taking more time out of my days and out of my life when I feel like there's so much more I need to be living for, but I'm just stuck because I gotta let myself like heal through all these things I put myself through. And the things I put myself through because I was getting better. Yeah. Because I was getting better. And it's this whole back and forth with me. Now, there's a big weight that has been lifted off my shoulders because my brother has finally quit that job with those people that weren't so great to be around. And it's a job I used to have, and it was great for me to be around. And him working that job after I didn't completely eliminate that from my life. Now, there's so many things I've moved past and gotten over this past year or so, year and a half now, since I've not been working there. But it was still weighing on me to an extent. And I don't think it's a coincidence that overall I've been feeling a little better lately. It's definitely not a coincidence. It's definitely him leaving that job and that kind of being in the review mirror now. Now, what I wanted it to be was going to be a dramatic shift, but the reality is it isn't. But it's been nice and gradual, but it still makes those moments where things aren't going so good that more frustrating. And by moments that aren't going so good, I mean the ones that I create. If it's something that's genuinely being thrown at me, it's actually weirdly not an issue because that's a real thing that I can latch onto. It's like, okay, this is an actual problem that needs solved, and all of a sudden, then I'm 100% when I actually begin to tackle those things. But when it's something I kind of do to myself, it's myself. It's the hardest thing for you to overcome are just issues, these obstacles in your own mind. When it's something real that's in front of you, you'd be surprised how you could just deal with that. But when it's something in your mind, it's something that's been concocted over years of traumas, and even if you aren't experiencing those traumas anymore, you kind of are just used to it. So then you create your own, and it's this constant, endless bullshit. And then it's the manifestation thing because now that it's like when you're in such a bad place mentally, you continue to be in such a bad place mentally because like it's reinforcing your bad thoughts and stuff like that. So it makes bad things happen to you, and then your mindset gets even worse. Hang on a second. Oh my god. Oh, oh, oh yeah. Oh, there's like a clicking in my neck as I was talking. Hang on. Yeah. I just cracked my neck. That was nice. Um, the fuck was I talking about? Oh yeah, the manifestation thing and like how when you think bad thoughts, then bad things happen that reinforce bad thoughts that make more bad things happen. So that's why it's so hard to get out of like because even if you experience such great euphoric moments that I've experienced before in my life, it's like oh man, I'm finally rid of da 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 da. Once you kind of let it back in, it can easily spiral, which creates this whole fear of it happening again and happening again. It makes it actually hard to get out of this place. That's another obstacle that makes it hard to get out of this place because now I'm thinking about, well, it's just this kind of mindset of it's just going to happen again. But I need to not be so much like that because, well, I mean, of course I need to not be like that, but like, I just like it, I catastrophize a lot. And it's just been so easy to do that recently because it is so comfortable there. Actually, moving forward is going to actually, because I am such a self aware person, it's actually going to make me think about things in a real sense. And the problem with that, because I'm so good at when I let myself, I'm so good at looking at things from an actual nuanced, realistic perspective. It makes me feel really alone. So there's a lot of people that think they look at things from realistic perspectives, but they don't. Some people are like way too optimistic and way too pessimistic without even realizing it. They think they're being real, but they're not. They're just like going against whatever narrative they want to go against or like whatever it is. It's not saying there aren't other people that think like me. There definitely are, but it's such a minority. even with the people I'm around normally, even the people I'm close to, they don't think the way I do. And I'm not just saying the shitty way I think about things right now. What I'm doing is damage myself. I don't wish that on anybody, and of course they don't think the way I do, and I hope they never do. But as far as like when I let myself be and let the clouds part a little bit and actually become functional again, it's to this level that's beyond a lot of people. And not in the sense of, oh, I'm amazing at all these things or like I'm really successful or anything like that. It's actually literally none of that because I am not any of those things. Hang on, I have such a bad itch right now. 'Cause I am literally none of those things. It's not that as much as like I just have. If I actually let myself be me, nothing would bother me. Because all I do and all the things that bother me are all these things that I think I have to do. And they might involve things I truly love, but they kind of just are influenced by the way that society tells you you're supposed to go about them, of like career and your passions and all this kind of stuff. And sometimes you have to prioritize different things at different times. And for me, right now, it is that whole just kind of getting better and taking things one step at a time. And yeah, starting from ground zero or step one or whatever, going back a little bit, reverting back or just whatever. Um, going, going back to step one, even though I've done it before, it's just kind of like relearning how to be me. But it's not even just that; it's the fact of I still, it's like I said, if I really let myself be me, the reality of the fact, if you actually are honest with yourself, which most people aren't, there are many things that matter that much. We all act like these things do, but they don't. And the reason people convince themselves is that so many things matter more than they do, or so many things are more important than maybe they actually are, or maybe this thing that's really important to you should be important to other people. The reason people think that way is because if you actually looked at things for what they really are, you would lose your mind. Right? People need to tell themselves these stories because it actually keeps them sane. Even if the viewpoints they have are really pessimistic and fucked up, it's what keeps them like from going insane because they won't actually let the reality of life kind of hit them, and that's the fact that really it's like, okay, I don't want to say nothing matters, but like with so much in this world, it's just not that deep, and there's nothing wrong with just existing. And that doesn't mean like do nothing, because it is important to be productive, but it's stop looking so much on how it looks to other people. Because there have been times in my life where I've been the most productive I've ever have, and nobody sees it. Nobody sees it on the outside, and they will, it's like that thing when you're being really productive, but then the one moment you take a break, a well-deserved break, and you like start scrolling on your phone, or you just kind of like sitting there watching TV. That's all that people see, shit like that. And that's a big lesson I've learned too. I mean, that's part of it, but it does make me think of another lesson I learned, which kind of has to do with it. Not really, but same kind of, and that is like I used to really focus on validation from other people, and that is a terrible mindset to be in. Because even if you get validation all the time, if you make that your goal in life is to get validation from other people, the second, like even if you get a shit ton, which I don't, but even if you get a shit ton, the second you don't get any, it's like now you're depressed. Now life is not worth living anymore because now you're not being constantly told how great you are and shit like that, and it can fuck you up. And so that there's that, but then in addition to that, it's like when you look at it from my perspective, and you're gonna get so few people complimenting you and stuff like that. The fact of the matter is, if you focus on validation and stuff, you're gonna be like always disappointed, like or what other people are gonna. Because okay, I know I was getting at it. It's like because I've heard stories. I think it was like Jack White specifically a story from him, but it's a story I've heard from other musicians. It's something I've felt myself. It's not anything that's been released or anything. It's just stuff I've come up with that I know is good, but like it was a funny story about. I'm not even saying this is his best song, but it was his most popular one of Seven Nation Army, and he came up with that riff, and he was so proud of it, and he showed his friends, and they did not give him much of a reaction. He showed people around, and they were just like, okay, whatever. But then it became this whole thing, and you do have to take into effect that maybe they're not in the mindset you want them to be in. You might be excited, and they might be stressing out about work or something. So you might have showed them the greatest thing they ever heard, but they're not really gonna completely absorb it, especially when it's just the riff and it's not a whole song. So it's like they're just kind of like they can be like that, and that just shows you right there. And that's the problem actually with a lot of people that aspire to music in particular, is a lot of people give up because of reasons like that, because they're not getting that great reaction that they expect from people, because they're so used to like these massive songs from these massive bands that everyone jizzes their pants over. So they think that's just like how it works immediately. But you'd be surprised how many of those people had presented the early work, the early stages of those songs to people, and had people just go, okay. The same, probably in a lot of cases, the same people that would just fucking just jam out to them when they actually, had them all released and all this kind of shit. And it's just like, yeah. So there's that. And that had been a big problem with me, is kind of like expecting this grand reaction out of people, and it is definitely because of like childhood. Because in my childhood, I went from feeling like shit about myself, and I don't really know why. And then one day just started, well, because I was different, and I knew I was different, but it was always like, I always felt bad for that. But then I started getting, but then the funny thing is, which is so funny because I go so opposite these days, and I need to be better about it. Because these days I'm like too hard on myself and trying to calculate things too much instead of just letting myself be. And what I mean by the irony of it is because like the reason I started getting some praise that would eventually make me like this and make me put too much pressure on myself and stuff is because I felt like such shit that I eventually just kind of gave up. And just as a result of giving up, it's not like I give up on what I want to do. I gave up on caring and just started doing my own thing. And once I started doing my own thing, people started to take notice of it and started being like, it wasn't all the time, but it was enough, especially from like my parents and stuff would take notice and be like, oh, you're really like smart or really good at this or whatever. And now that I started getting that validation that I was craving before and I just wasn't getting, now all of a sudden all those feelings were coming back. And now I was starting to focus too much on that. And then every time I didn't do that, get that validation, I would feel like shit and feel like a failure. So constantly going back and forth between super egotistical and feeling like I'm God to, feeling like a fucking failure. And there was like no middle ground. And it was this constant thing. And most of my life, I felt like a piece of shit because of the fact that I don't live up to these crazy expectations I've set for myself because of experiences like that. And it's just wild how that works, and it's a whole thing, and I could sit here thinking it to death, but I've done that enough, and I need to just let that go, because the important thing is to just be yourself. And that is not, it sounds like such simple fucking advice, and it's like, oh, well, duh, yeah, be yourself. But it's like, to truly be yourself means to, at least for me, means to eliminate a lot of that bullshit, a lot of the outside stuff, a lot of like even the things the people closest to you say and stuff like that. And like people always, you know, just whatever, you can't internalize the way other people might think of you or the way they might live their lives, or maybe things that worked out for them that they try to prescribe to you, which is always the thing that's irritated me. Just because it worked out for you doesn't mean it's gonna work out for me. But like, but the thing is, it's like that too. Also, kind of is tricky because like parents, for instance, I growing up, now that I'm grown up, I can kind of more accurately see where my parents were wrong and right. And that's difficult to see before. When you're young, it seems to be more black and white. Like either they're all wrong or they're all right and stuff like that about whatever. But it's like it's not like that. It's when I've grown up, I kind of realize all the ways that I thought they were right, but they were actually wrong. I realized the ways that I thought they were right, and they were right. I realized the ways I thought they were wrong about stuff, but then I get older and I get perspective. I'm like, oh. And then the things that I also felt they were wrong about, that I grew up and like, no, yeah, they were definitely wrong about that. So it's such a mixed bag of things, and that is hard because you're when you're growing up and you're a kid, it's so you just kind of like that's when you absorb most of the stuff that's going to kind of make you, and that's for better or for worse, and honestly quite often for worse, because when you're a kid, you think in such black and white ways, and then you grow up to realize that it's not like that. And but like most of your development comes in that stage where you're mentally thinking about things really black and white. So it's tricky, and that's the reason most of us are fucked up. It's not just because we're super traumatized. It's just because now our brains are working differently. But this super simplistic mindset is so ingrained into us that it's like they're like fighting with each other, and yeah. Or they can't fight with each other. You do kind of have to, learn to release and surrender and let go. But that right there is very hard for a lot of people to do. And because surrender is such a bad word, right? Because obviously, if you're in a fucking war and you're truly, assuming you're truly on the good side of things, you don't want to surrender. Like that's a terrible thing to do, right? So it's just regardless. It's whatever metaphor you want to use, whatever scenario you want to paint it as. It's a scary thing. You hear that word and you're like, why would I surrender? But like, especially for people with anxiety, it's actually very important to do. Which is the funny thing is because the second you actually surrender to things, the anxiety actually amps up. It doesn't get better. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. It actually gets worse, at least at first, because now you're letting all those things in that you tried to like control. Because that's what people who are anxious try to do all the time is try to control shit. And that's why, and that leads to like just whatever issues, or maybe not trying things that they should, or procrastinating on stuff and all this kind of shit because they're trying to put things in these controlled environments. Because actually letting things, because anxiety is like fear of the unknown and all this kind of shit, or like whatever. And it's just like, yeah. So it becomes this whole thing of just like, fuck, like, yeah. It's rough. So yeah, and that's the other thing is like, I've mentioned it before that the transition I am going through and need to go through and let myself completely go through. Well, one, letting myself go through it is going to be part of that surrender thing. So this applies to what I was saying about surrender, but this applies to the growth in general that I got to go through, and most people got to go through. If you truly want to grow, the metaphor I will use is growing my hair out. Because there have been times I grew my hair out, and well, one, I cut it because it just was too much maintenance to like maintain enough. But like what I'm getting at is, at least when I made it look good, it looked good. But like the thing about it is there is a stage before it starts to look good. There's the short stage, which looks good on me. And then when I get to the point I'm talking about, it looks good on me. But then there's that stage in between where it's awkward as fuck. And people are gonna like discourage you and tell you, cut your hair, that looks terrible and all this kind of shit. But it's gonna be better. And then that's another thing about not listening to other people. So it's gonna look better over, on the other side of things. You just got to kind of keep the faith and keep going with it. And it's a stage that sucks and you don't want to be in, but it is necessary if you want to get to that other side of things. Now, you don't have to fucking grow. I don't have to. That's the metaphor I use, but I'm not really planning to grow my hair. In fact, I'm planning on getting this cut right now. But like, what I'm getting at, that I always thought that was a good metaphor because that is something I've experienced and that is real, and I've seen it work out for the best. Well, I mean, till I got tired of it and wanted to cut it all off. But still, like ignoring the whole cutting it all off part, because that was just a personal choice about hair. Up to that point, it is very much a great metaphor for just life and for self-improvement and stuff like that, for your fitness journey and stuff like that. Because like when people there's always a state where it's so funny because anybody could be working out, you wouldn't even know it, because not a lot of people are going to be at that, like, I'm super strong, whatever state, and big muscles and stuff like that. But it's so funny though that people look at people that work out and they don't have that, and it's like, are you sure you work out? Without being aware of maybe the stage in their journey that they're in, right? So it's like this weird thing. It's like, oh, when people are talking about, yeah, after all this time of working out, I finally look at someone who works out, and I always think it's the funniest fucking thing, because someone who looks like they work out should be just anybody, but it's always fucked up that it's only the people that have achieved a lot in it that people will recognize. Like, that guy definitely works out, instead of all the people that may be working towards that and maybe aren't like that now, but will be that maybe in like maybe even a year, and you won't even know that. You just kind of write them off of like, you must be doing something wrong or something like that. And it's just like, yeah. So that's a big thing too. That's another element not to worry about when it comes to other people's opinions so much, as the whole working out thing. But it's whole societal pressure and stuff. But what I was originally getting, I was saying that there's even that too. There's always this weird in between point, like maybe where you gained a bunch of weight and you're trying to lose it all, but you're in that weird in between stage where you're now like skinny fat because you were fat, and now you're getting back down to something like that. It's like this weird like. It's this weird in between look that nobody likes, right? There are people that are chubby cheeses. There are people that are fucking into skinny people. There are people that are muscular, whatever. But there's that weird in between stage. There's like this weird skinny fat shit that is just like to most people it's just like, uh. But a lot of times it's the result of people that are working towards something, and you're gonna have that. And even I fucking deal with that. And it's fucking irritating, but. But yeah, and in fact, that's even majority of life. I've said it in rehab before. It's most of our lives are composed of like in between moments. Most of our lives are composed of like if someone made a movie of your life, the majority, no matter who you are, the majority of your life would be cut out of that final product because most of our lives are filled with these in between moments that nobody wants to watch. And that's not a thing about you. That's a lot of us. Some of us that are great fucking people to be around and all this kind of shit. Most of your life are going to be this in between moments. It's going to be you going through your day to day whatever. It's not going to be uh, like I said, it's a movie worthy thing. Like even if you are a person who has a very eventful life, there's really the majority of our lives are just these in between moments. But we take those ones for granted and only focus on the big moments. This party I went to, this concert, this job I landed, I don't fucking know what you want to say, just like Christmas time, all these big events are the things we really just like grasp onto, and those are great. But the reason those are so great is because most of our lives are not filled with those. But we take advantage, we take for granted the fact, we take for granted like the majority of our lives, even if we do appreciate those really high moments, because of the fact that most of our lives are just these in between moments, these buffering moments, these loading moments, these loading screens, like in between fucking levels and shit like that, and like and all this kind of stuff. This is this, yeah, and that actually applies to like when you see someone, for instance, who becomes like a success, like a musician or stuff like that, who seemingly does it overnight, but nobody fucking sees the work they put in to get there, and it can seem overnight on the outside, but like that's just what you see. Unless they're a fucking an industry plant or it's nepotism, which that definitely does happen a lot. Um, but some people get wrongly accused of like and being industry plant and stuff like that. I will get to that though because of what I'm saying right now is like the point is regardless of how they got there, a lot of times you don't see that. So some people can seem like they came out of nowhere, and that goes like to the industry plant thing, where like anybody who seems like they came out of nowhere gets labeled that, even though it's probably a smaller percentage than you think that are actually that. Even though there are a lot of them, absolutely, there are, especially like pop stars and stuff like that. There are people that are sitting there just trying to like manipulate shit into whatever, and there are people that don't deserve the success. There are people that are that were rich and just kind of like waltzed in there and became a thing overnight. That happens, but too many people throw that at anybody just because of the fact that regardless of if they are or aren't someone who just popped up one day, a lot of times it seems like that when that wasn't the case, because that's just the fact of life is like people just kind of see the highlights. And that's also should be an encouraging thing at the same time, is because we feel like shit about ourselves, but it's like, if you are concerned with how people think too much, it's like, most people don't even like witness you or notice you until you do something cool anyway. So it's like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's just like, you shouldn't worry, I guess, so much about fucking up along the way, because people generally don't see that part. Especially in the beginning. People just see when you blow up. Not saying people don't notice when you fuck up a lot. I mean, I kind of went back to that thing I was talking about. It's not a fuck up necessarily, but when you are being really productive, but only the people only see you in those moments where you kind of sit there and you're doing nothing, and they're like, "Well, you just do nothing all day." So there is that. So it's it's a little nuanced. It's not exactly black and white. It's like, oh, they'll never see your moments where you don't want them to see you. It's like people will. It's just like, but like, I don't know. It's just not as bad as it might seem. This is something I'm just telling myself right now, but like, yeah. So today's been a day, even though nothing's happened. So I kind of just gotta chin up, kind of try to eliminate the issues without trying to eliminate them so much, because that's a little too much of what I do. Is I sit here for too long and try to think things to death, and that's not the way to go about things. When something's really nagging at me and I can't figure out what it is, the way to get to it is to just kind of generally let go, because it will come back to me. The thing that does drive you crazy is it might not come back to you right now. It might not come back to me for a few more days to figure out what my issue was. Maybe my issue was like, oh fuck, I gotta make that doctor's appointment. That's what's been bothering me this whole time, but it's just not been there. But instead I choose to catastrophize it when that's just so fucking unnecessary, because if it was something that was that fucking pressing, it would be at the forefront of my mind. If someone was that I knew was dying, I'm not gonna just forget that. Right? I'm not just gonna be like, oh, what? There was something today. I can't remember what it was. That is a thing you're not gonna fucking forget, you know. I'm not saying the things that skip your mind and will come back later. I'm not saying they aren't important, but it's not important to the extent of the world's gonna fucking just blow up if you just like can't take care of it right now or something like that. Which is, I guess, my issue just my whole life right now is I've been doing that a lot with everything. I've been acting like every single thing is this thing of, if I don't handle this now, everything's gonna fall apart, and that's just not true. Yeah. I think I pretty much said all I need to say. I still have that problem that I always have of not knowing when to cut things off. And I think that has always been because of me not letting myself have things enough. And because of that, if I'm in an interesting conversation with someone, or I'm filming a video where I'm kind of getting into the topic, or I'm making a song, or I'm playing a video game or something like that, because I don't let myself do it enough, the second I actually let it in, now I can't stop myself. And I think the reason I can't stop myself is not just because of the fact that like I need to take as much of this in as I can because I don't let myself do it enough. That is a big part of it. And that is frustrating because it feeds into the other part of it, which is the fact that like I know there's a good chance I'm going to fall right back into that rut if I let myself stop this right now. Right? I'm going to fall right back into that. And I guess the frustration is I know that the only way to get out of this is to pick myself back up constantly and be aware that I am going to keep falling in the meantime, because I've spent so long in that state. It's going to be really hard for me. I can't constantly be on 100% of the time and expect that to fix things, because one, that's going to burn myself out in its own way, and then two, it's just kind of like, it's just unrealistic. It's just, you got to have the in-between, got to have to let it go. I think my thing's fucking running out of battery. Well, not battery, but memory on the thing, so yeah, I don't even know if I covered all I wanted to, but there you go.